Hello everyone, I'm Tim from Tim's PC and I build custom PCs to suit anyone's needs or budget, and I also live stream all of my builds and repairs for transparency and for educational purposes. So if you would like to have an awesome new PC built live here, send me a message today. So tonight we're going to be building Nick's PC. This is a PC for his son, and basically he came to me and he had a bit of a budget in mind, and we put together this build that'll get his son playing games like Fortnite, as all the kids want to play these days. So we don't really have too much else to give in the backstory on this build. It was pretty straightforward, but we'll go through the components that we've chosen here today, and we'll start with our motherboard here. So this is the MSI B460 Mortar Wi-Fi motherboard. So this is a pretty good value Intel 10th gen motherboard here. So it's got onboard Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and it's also got two M.2 slots. So it's a pretty well equipped motherboard here, especially for a B460. We've also got here, just put this down, a GTX 1650 Super here. So it's not the cheapest graphics card that you can buy, but it's certainly not the most expensive graphics card that you can buy. So with the graphic card situation right now, it pretty much goes from this all the way up to $1,000 graphics cards. There's not really too much else available. Dominic is here. Hey Dominic, how you going? Good to have you with us. Just doing another build here tonight. And so for our SSD, we've got a Crucial P2 500GB, and for our memory we have two sticks of Aorus DDR4 3200 CAS latency 16 memory. So this is decent, fast, low latency memory there. For our case here, we've got three Silverstone Airblazer 120mm ARGB fans. We're going to be powering it all with our Intel Core i5-10400F CPU. And of course the F means that with this CPU, we do require a graphics card to get a display output. For our power supply here, we've gone with a Cooler Master 750 watt. So this is an 80 plus rated power supply. It puts out, 744 watts on the 12 volt rail there. So it's pretty much as advertised, a 750 watt power supply. And the reason why we've gone with this sort of power supply is it gives the customer the option to upgrade their graphics card and processor in time. So when a good deal comes out on a much more powerful graphics card than what they've got, they're ready to just buy that graphics card and install it, hook it up, and they'll know they've got plenty of power here to support that. So I'll leave that with the case. I'll leave the fans with the case. I should talk about our case here. So this is the Aza, what model is it? The Aza, is it Luminous 550 or 55?
Luminous 110.
Luminous 110. Well, 55's half of 110, so my brain was somewhat there. Yeah, so the Aza Luminous 110. This is a micro ATX case. It supports, looks like it supports up to 360mm radiators on the front, 240 and 280 on the top. 120mm fan at the back there. It does have RGB lighting on the front of the case there, which can be adjusted by, I think there's a button on the front I/O there. On our front I/O at the top here, we've got one USB 3, two USB 2s, and headphone and microphone inputs. So pretty basic there. And like I said, it's just a micro ATX case, power supply at the bottom. There's a bit of room there for cable management. It's a decent amount of room for cable management for a case this size. So that's good. That's one thing that I like about it in particular. But we can move on with our build. So we'll put the graphics card to the side. We don't have a Wi-Fi adapter or any other PCIe devices because our motherboard has onboard Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so we don't have to worry about that. But let's have a look at this motherboard in a bit more detail. But first, let me get out everything we need from this box. We'll need our Wi-Fi antennas, and got some M.2 screws here as well, so we'll get them out. So the i5-10400F CPU is a 6-core 12-thread CPU, so it's a bit of a step up from the 9400F in terms of its overall performance. And so this here is our motherboard, the MSI Mag B460M Mortar Wi-Fi. So let's go around the board here and check out some of our features, starting up in this corner here. So up here we have an 8-pin CPU power connector. We've got decent heat sinks on our MOSFETs and VRMs here, so that's nice to see. We've got, what's that, a J1? Would that be a clear CMOS? No, that's not a clear CMOS. That will be a clear CMOS. I couldn't tell you what that is off the top of my head. I would have to look that up on the motherboard manual. See, that's the thing about motherboards. Some of them will have just random headers on it that aren't on sort of most motherboards, and some things you're going to have to look up and see exactly what they will actually do, and they'll have different markings and different code names on different boards. But if anyone's interested, hit me up about that, and I will let you know exactly what that header is. Moving around here, we have our two CPU fan. We have a CPU fan and a pump fan header. So that's good to see there. Relatively close to the CPU. It's a pain when they're not lined up. So Dominic's asked, how's my day been? Yeah, my day's been pretty good. Had an in-home install early this morning, and then going to pick up some parts and stuff in the afternoon, and yeah, just doing a bit of stuff, the usual things, I guess. So it's been a pretty good day. We've got the Easy Debug LEDs down here. So these are 4 little lights that tell you what's wrong with your computer if you are having a problem. So there's one that says boot, VGA, RAM, and CPU. And so that should be pretty straightforward as to what they all mean. But just because you're getting something that's causing that light to show up doesn't mean that the light that's turning on is actually the cause of the fault. So there's one that says boot, VGA, RAM, and CPU. And the thing is, they are all connected by this motherboard. So obviously, if there's a problem with the motherboard, potentially it could cause any of those lights to turn on. So you got to be a bit careful with that. They're not completely foolproof in terms of their diagnosis, but it's a guide. It will tell you, 90% of the time what's wrong. So we've got the 24-pin ATX power for our motherboard. We have dual channel memory here, so 4 slots, 2 different channels. Down here we've got a USB Type-C header. I don't think we have a USB Type-C on this case, so that won't be in use. We have 6 SATA ports here. None of them will be in use in this build. And then we've got our front panel headers there, our TPM there. That will be JFP2, that is a speaker header. JC11, that looks like clear CMOS. No, JBD1 is clear CMOS on the MSI board. I can't think of what that would be. That could be a number of things. Moving on here, this big black one down the bottom is our USB 3, so these pins in here are quite delicate. Be careful when you plug them in. Then we've got 2 USB 2.0s. We've got a 5-volt RGB header. We've got another fan header. And we've got our Thunderbolt connection, and we've got 12-volt RGB, and we've got our audio here, and no Sony Philips digital interface header. We've got another chassis fan header there as well. And then moving on to our PCIe system. So we've got two M2 slots here. So this main one up here and an auxiliary down here. We've got one PCIe X16 length slot there. We've got one X1 slot there. And we've got this one down here, which is X16 length, but it's only connected X8 along. So yeah, a little bit more than halfway along, that's where the pins stop, and that's what we call an X8. So there's X4, X8, and X16. And they can all have the same length slot. And you could plug, if you had a PCIe device that was just fitting in that X1 slot, you could put it in this big long slot and it will work just fine as well. So it doesn't have to be in that one, you can actually use them in any of them. Alrighty, so if you're wondering what this thing here is, this is where our chipset is. So this is the part of the motherboard that controls the SATA, the USB, the PCIe system, and communicates that like with the motherboard. What have we got here, Travis? I like the white highlights of the board. Yeah, so it's they're not exactly white. It's more like an aluminium silver color, I guess you would say. But it look really nice in, you know, a white case. So if you went with a white case design, you could go with a board like this, and it would look pretty good in it. So moving around the back here, we'll have a look at the rear I/O. So we've got a PS2 port there. It's like two USB 3s, HDMI and display port, which will not be in use in this build. And we've got a USB-C and three other USB 3.2s. We've got 2.5 gigabit Ethernet on the motherboard. We've got our Wi-Fi 6 Bluetooth 5.1. We've got Sony Philips digital interface, the optical audio out there, and we've also got our surround sound audio outputs there. And so that pretty much covers all the basics on the MSI Mag B450M Mortar Wi-Fi motherboard. So let's get started. So we can start here with our CPU. We're just going to be installing the stock cooler on this one today. So the 10400F runs quite fine with the stock cooler. It's not a big deal. Whereas if you had the i7 or something like that, it would be more concerning to be running with the stock cooler. We'll take our CPU out here. And so our Intel CPUs are significantly less fragile than the Ryzen CPU that we were using. So like that one last night, if you caught my stream last night, I should say, I had an AMD CPU with a pin that was just slightly bent, and I even inspected it. I didn't see it. I went to put it in the socket, and it bent it a little bit more, and it slightly bent the one next to it. So then I had to do a pin repair. So that was fun doing a pin repair live, but I got to show people sort of how it's done and do a live repair from an issue that came up mid-build. So that was good. I think people like seeing things like that. But with this CPU, we're not going to have that problem because Intel have little touch pads on the bottom of their CPU. They don't actually have pins. The pins are actually in the socket, so the delicate part is actually on the motherboard. And that's why the socket is covered underneath this protective plastic flap. So if you're going to damage something on your Intel motherboard while you're setting up your computer, it's most likely going to be the pins in the socket. When you open this up and you go to put it in there, you'll drop it in the socket because you'll have slippery fingers or something like that. That's how you're going to damage this board. And so when we install our Intel CPUs, we've got these two little notches on either side of the chip. There's two little notches on the side of the socket there. And so what we want to do is we want to line these up as close as possible. And it should just drop into the socket, just like that. And just make sure that your corners are not sticking up. And once it's in the socket, you can just put the flap down, press down this bar. There's quite a bit of resistance there, don't mind that, and this bit of plastic will come off. So you want to keep this bit of plastic. It's for if you ever have a warranty claim on your motherboard, it has to be sent back with this bit of plastic installed. If not, it's an instant rejection. They won't accept a motherboard for warranty if it's not covered with this. This is how they shipped it to you with this. You've got to ship it back to them with this. So very important, don't get caught out, especially if you're buying a more expensive motherboard. If you're buying a cheap motherboard, it's generally not worth it even bothering with a warranty. You just buy another one because you're going to be without it for ages and it's not worth the inconvenience. But for everyone else, if you've got a more expensive motherboard, it might be a bit of a more big deal for you, especially sending it back. You know, if you've spent $700, $800 on a motherboard, you're probably going to want to send that back, and you're probably going to want a replacement if something goes wrong with it. So alright, so we just got an Intel stock cooler. So these are pretty easy to install. The only thing that we have to do is we need to make sure that the board's sort of off the ground. It's just got these little feet that stick through these holes. And then we just got to press them down and they sort of clip in place. So try to hold the motherboard where possible on this back plate. Evening, Boris. Good to have you with us. There we go. And you'll feel all these little pins just click in place. And you'll see on the bottom of the motherboard that they've come through and they're now held securely in place. And once you've installed your Intel stock cooler properly, you should be able to just pick it up by that and put a bit of pressure on it, and it shouldn't come loose. If you do this and you feel it come loose, then you obviously haven't secured these properly. If you haven't secured them properly, then your CPU is probably going to overheat. So we need to route a CPU fan cable. So what we're doing here is we're going to route it around the cooler where possible. I'm going to route it up here and put it over that header. And there, that's nice and neat and tucked away like that. The only other thing that I like to do here, this is not essential, but I don't like the blue Intel branding on the top. So we just give that a quick colour in with a paint pen. There we go. That's looking pretty nice. So we've got our CPU and our cooler installed now. So now we've got our M.2 drive. So this is the modern form of SSD, and actually I can show you guys something. I got another type of M2 SSD because there are two different types. So I'll show you. Have a look at this one. Let's have a look at this one. Okay, so these are the two different types of SSD. You can see them quite clearly there. So the one I've got here in my left hand is called a SATA M2 SSD. So notice it's got the two little grooves in the interface at the end. That's how you define it. So the second one here that I've got is called an NVMe SSD. This is the modern type. So even though these look very, very similar, they look like little sticks of gum or something like that. They look like American sticks of gum if you've been to America. They're basically very, very different. This one here will communicate through the SATA bus. So what that means is it'll communicate through the same system that your standard old school SSDs, the 2.5-inch ones in the plastic boxes. It'll communicate at those speeds. This one here, this NVMe one, this communicates through the PCIe bus, which is the same system that your graphics card communicates through. It's much faster than the SATA bus, like orders of magnitude faster. And so as a result, these M2 NVMe SSDs are up to 4 to 5 times as fast as these SATA ones. So when you're looking for an SSD and you see these two different types and you're thinking, hey, this one looks like a good buy, it's actually a much lower performance SSD. So it's important to know the difference there between your SATA and NVMe M2 SSDs, because not all M2 SSDs are the same. M2 is the name of the type of interface that it plugs into. That's what the end of it is referred to. And these are referred to as M keys. There's different types of M key that you can get. But basically these are two of the modern ones that we use here. But they're very, very different in how they communicate with your CPU and the rest of your system. So in this case, we've gone with this one here, the NVMe SSD. So this is the good one. This is the kind of SSD that you would want to install in your computer. You wouldn't want to use these slower SATA ones unless you were on a budget. So where do these older ones come into use? If you are on a budget, or if you have an older device that is not compatible with these M.2 NVMe SSDs, it may be compatible with these. The other reason why you might want to use these is if you were running a lot of things through your PCIe bus, there might be a situation where too much of the bandwidth on that bus is being utilized by the graphics card, Wi-Fi, and other things that are plugged into that PCIe system. And if you use one of these, you might actually end up with some better performance or the same performance as you would with an NVMe SSD, just because it could go through the SATA bus, which isn't bottlenecked by the rest of the activity that you've got going on. So that's a little bit about M2 SSDs. So who we got? Nick's joined us. Hey Nick, how you going? Good to have you with us. Boris asks, is this a media, game, or editing build? So this is a budget gaming PC. So this is for, I think it's for Nick's son. So basically Nick came to me needing a gaming setup for his son. Didn't want to spend ridiculous amounts for it, but wanted it to be half decent and wanted it to be something that could be upgraded in the future. And we came up with the configuration here tonight. Basically, got an i5 10400F and we've got a GTX 1650 Super, but we've got a big 750 watt power supply, so they'll be able to upgrade their graphics card and even their CPU in the future. So we'll get started and we'll install this NVMe SSD. So we'll install it under this first one, this heat shield that we've got here. Yeah, so Dom, I think yours was one of the 9th gen ones. But, oh no, I think yours is the same as this one, mate. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I've shown you the exact same one, the i5-10400F, and I'm pretty sure this is the exact same motherboard as well. So, this is a preview. There you go. We'll just put that down there. And so for our NVMe M2 drives, they all go in the same. So we could plug that older one into this socket. That's fine. So they just sort of slide in on an angle. And they sort of bob up and down like that. That's fine. We had a couple of M2 screws here. I'm glad they're starting to put extras in. Because they're so small and they're really easy to lose. So we'll install that one there. And I like to try, when I remember, I like to install the second one, just in case the customer wants to add another M.2 drive in the future. So we've got that all hooked up. So on the bottom of this heat shield we had this bit of plastic. Make sure you remove the plastic. It says, "How are you, Tim?" "Yeah, mate, I'm pretty good. Just doing my thing." Attempting to. Why is that? Alrighty. So we've got our M.2 drive installed. So now we'll turn our attention here to the RAM. And so obviously people call these RAM or RAM sticks, but RAM is actually the name of the memory that's on the sticks themselves. The sticks are called DIMMs, or dual inline memory modules, and that's why they've got the little divider in the middle of them, because they are dual inline memory modules. It's two modules on the one stick. And so we used to have, back in the day, we used to have SIMs before these, and now we have DIMMs. And so basically with our memory, when we've got 4 slots like this, and we've only got two DIMMs, we've got to put them in one slot apart. And the reason is, both these slots that are right next to each other, they're in the same channel. And what that's all about is essentially the CPU can communicate with both channels at the same time. Is there a bit of plastic on them? They've got to cover their logo with a bit of plastic. And so basically each of the slots, they're right next to each other and they're in the same channel. So the CPU can communicate with both channels at the same time. So by putting 2 sticks in 2 different channels, it means that all of that memory, both of them can be communicated with at the same time. So if you've got heap of programs open and you're doing a heap of things, obviously it's better if 2 things can be accessed at once than compared to 1. So if you put them in right next to each other, then they're going to be in the 1 channel, and it will be the same as you just having one. So these are 8 gigabyte sticks. If we plugged them in right next to each other, it'd be the same as just having one 16 gigabyte stick. But if we have them in 2 different channels, we get the speed advantage of having them in dual channel mode. And so obviously this doesn't matter if you've got 4, because you're going to be in dual channel mode then anyway, because all slots will be occupied. So, alrighty, well that is our board prepped. We've got our CPU cooler, and our M.2 drive. And so we can put this board, I'll probably just put it around here. We can turn our attention now to the case. We've got this power supply, and we've got 3 RGB fans. So another reason why I've gone with this power supply is it's got flat black cables. They look so much nicer in the build. Here it is. Cooler Master, 750 watt, 80 plus rated power supply. Got a power cable there, we've got some fan bolts. So we got our fans here. There are Silverstone Airblazer 120i's. They come with a RGB controller if required. And so let's have a look. Do we have daisy chain capabilities? Yes, we do. We won't be needing the RGB controller. Don't need any of that. So here we go. These Airblazer fans are really good. They've got rubber around the screw holes there to help reduce vibration. And for $60 for a 3-pack of fans with a controller if you need it, not a bad way to go. Definitely cheaper stuff on Wish, but the quality isn't going to be there. Like, these fans are cheap, and they're a decent quality fan that's actually going to last you. So it's always something to consider when you're buying parts from places like Wish. And one thing I'm going to do as I start developing the YouTube channel further is I'm going to build a couple of computers from Wish parts, and we're going to keep them running for a while, indefinitely, and sort of see how long they last. What do you reckon? You want to take some bets on how long things last when I keep them running, just 24/7? Might be some surprising lessons to be learned. Maybe we'll find some things that are better quality than you'd think. And maybe there'll be some things that you'd think are good quality and they're not. Now we've got dual-sided sticky here on the glass. So as you can see, it supports full-length graphics cards in this case, which is another reason why we've gone with this case. Sam says, "Hell yeah, torture test with some Wish computers." Yeah, I think that would be a really interesting thing to explore. Like let's just leave it. Let's get all the fans, everything. Let's just get it all running full ball all the time. Let's just leave that computer running for weeks, and let's just see. Let's let's stress test it and make sure nothing's stupidly overheating. Make sure it's all operating correctly within, you know, within safe limits. And then let's just see how long these things really last. Like, there's some really cheap and decent looking RGB fans you can get on Wish, but how long do they really last? I'd say it's probably pretty much luck of the draw almost. I reckon from the same batch you're going to have varying life of fans and the components in there, because I think that what we'd find is that the quality control wouldn't be there, and while there'd be some like decent quality parts getting around, there'd be some parts under the same brand that would not be up to the same level of quality as the rest of it. That would be my prediction. I'll throw a pineapple at it dead after 72 hours. Yeah, well, let's see. I mean, I'd love to see how that sort of stuff goes. I just don't have time, but I might have time soon. So yeah, we're going to screw this power supply up so it's going to exhaust a bit of air from the case. Because this pre-installed fan at the back here, we're not actually going to be using that one. Kogan versus Wish. Oh mate, Kogan's got some good stuff, eh? Nah, Kogan now, like there's the Kogan branded products, but Kogan's sort of trying to take on Amazon now. So you can get like anything and everything from Kogan these days. There's like Kogan, catch.com.au, Amazon, they're all kind of like competing in that same kind of space. Yeah, so we're just gonna unscrew. Oh, love those factory tightened bolts. Bring out the power drill. Nah, they're not that bad. Kogan would win. Yeah, but I mean, he just gets his buyers to go over to China and negotiate to buy product in bulk with Kogan branded stuff on it. So it's not that different to Wish. Like, they got to be buying stuff from the same manufacturers and stuff in China and wherever else. Because that's pretty much how it's done, eh? Like Kogan will just send a guy over there, and his job is to just acquire stock. So he'll just go around to factories that are making whatever, and he's just like, hey, so if we buy like 10,000 units, would you put our brand on it? Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, sweet. Okay, I'll buy 10,000 units. Like, it's that kind of, I probably simplified it a little bit there, but that's pretty much how it goes down. And then he just puts his brand on it, imports them back to Australia and sells them cheap as on his online store. Nick says, still waiting for Tim to buy a heap of random parts off Wish. Yes. Yeah, that'll be fun. It definitely will be. Alrighty. So let's get our motherboard installed. So nice and easy, because we've got this pre-installed motherboard I/O. We don't have to put an I/O shield in this board. So we need to make sure our motherboard offsets are in the correct orientation. And in this case, they're dead on. But we are missing 2 of them. Yeah. So Nick says that'll be a video and a half when we do this. Yeah, definitely, it'll be good fun. It really will. So let's put a couple more offsets in this motherboard. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, once again, just pick it up from the cooler. Once you've got your cooler properly installed, it's a good place to pick it up from, because it's right in the middle of the board, so there's limited amount of board flex when you do this. But the board's not going to flex that much because, see, the plate, the force of it is being held on both sides of the board. So there's very little flex when you pick up a board like this. There we go. Nick says he started playing some emulators on his rig. Ah, nice. Good old emulators. I love them. Well, so with these micro ATX boards, this is a full-size micro ATX board, so it's got 8 screw holes. There we go. One installed motherboard. Now it's in place, we can just screw on our Wi-Fi antennas. There we go, all coming along. So now we've got some cables at the back here that we need to do something about. So we're going to need this one. We're going to need this one. We're not going to need this. We will need this. And we don't need any of these other ones. So what we're going to do, we're just going to take a zip tie and we're going to tie them down, and we'll just clip that off with our pliers, and then these cables can go back in here where they came from, out of the way of the cables that we actually do need. So this one here is for our CPU, so we'll run that one up like this. That's that top one there. There we go. So the CPU cable is just tucked away around the perimeter there, all out of sight. And so now we're just left with these front panels and power for our motherboard and our graphics card. So we can turn our attention now to the RGB fans. So we got 3 of these to install. Just getting rid of these little cable ties and these labels. So these fans can be daisy chained. And so what daisy chained means is we can run the power along the line and see on the end of these fans they've got a male and a female connection on both. So what that means is, say this female one can fit on the male pins that are on the motherboard, and then this male header can power the second fan here like that, and then this other male header, this can power the third fan over there. And so now we have 3 fans daisy chained together, and so we've got this one that goes into the motherboard, and then it goes to these 3 fans. And another good point to note here, just FYI, is that this is the RGB, but then there are also 3 of these fan headers. You need to plug these in to make the actual fans spin. The lighting and the fan rotation is 2 separate lines. So that's why installing RGB things can be very, very complicated, especially to first-time builders, because you have this random mess of cables, and if you don't know what I've just shown you there in that last few minutes, it's really simple. But if you don't know that and you're pulling these out, you just don't know what to make of it. So we will briefly disconnect our daisy chain, but it's coming back. You better believe it's coming back. And so they put these little protectors over the male ones there, just so you don't bend any pins. with this back one screwed in. This is nice and easy. And then our front ones, we'll have to take the front panel off to screw them in. Oh, hey Donald. Yeah, you can watch it later, mate. It's not going anywhere. Work on a Sunday night, though, that's got to be pretty good. Unless you're on salary or something. I used to work every Sunday night back at Coles, and I was a salary manager, so I didn't get anything extra for it. Ripped off, right? Okay, so front of these cases just pop off like that. Really, really easy. And it can feel a bit, sometimes it can feel like you're going to break them, but you're most likely not going to break them. Just try and pull it off as straight as possible. So when you pull them off on a funny angle, that you could potentially snap the clips. So obviously you don't want to be doing that. And we'll just feed these. I'm going to put the bottom one in first because of the amount of room that I have. It's going to be very awkward for me to fit the top one and then fit the bottom one. So I need some fan bolts. I have absolutely no shortage of these. Oh, get these fans in. There we go, there's fan number one. Let's get fan number two in place. Alrighty, have all of our fans installed there now. There we go, so now we've got more wires out the back here. It looks like I do need 1 Molex power for this, for the front RGB. Yep, that would be fine. Just like that, tucked away. Okay, so let's have a look at daisy chaining these RGBs. So first step with our daisy chaining is we need to hook 1 female header onto the male pins on our motherboard. You would think it'd be easy to get this on, but these 3 pins are really painful to get on straight. There we go. Alright, so we've got our first one here. Let's just untangle these wires here. And so I've got these other ones here, so let's run them along the same line here. Here we go. Got 1, 2, and 3. That should be everything all connected. So now we've got this fan power there. So all these RGBs. So what we can do now is we can just wrap these up. Just like that. We can put a zip tie around them. And then to be extra neat, you can always zip tie them. We'll just tie them back like that, out of the way, and there's our RGB cables. About as out of the way as we can get them. So this fan here for our for our exhaust fan, we've ran it out the back here, but we're actually going to run it back out the front now. And that's just a sneaky way of using up some of the cable length. we've got a sneaky little header down here. And there we go, you wouldn't even know there's a cable plugged in there. So now we've got two more fan headers that we've got to hook up. So I remember seeing one down the bottom here, so you could follow that same line. Just slip that on like that, and be tied down, or it doesn't really have to. And then this little sneaky guy, can we fit him through any of these holes? No. So we'll come up the top here, and that can be discreetly hooked on here. Very good. So I've got all of our fans installed, so now we can go to these front panel connectors and stuff. So let's probably start with, they're all down the bottom, so why not just start from one end to the other. So first we'll do all of these cables here. So we don't have a reset, there's no reset switch on this computer. So we've just got our power LEDs, our hard drive LED, and our power switch. Very good. Front panels are installed. So we can just take another zip tie, just tie down that excess there. There we go. So now we just got these big thick ones. So we've got audio, USB, and USB 3.0. So these can all go down. And up through there. So we'll probably tie this down up through there. that was not working in the dark. There we go. So those cables are been pretty neat down the bottom there. And so now we don't really have too much more to do. Couple more zip ties here and we'll be in business. Those graphics card cables around there. And we'll take a thick zip tie. There we go, it's all looking nice and tucked away there. So we're ready for our final installation piece, which is our graphics card. This thing is just getting in the way. Here it is, our little 1650 Super. Can output to 3 displays. It's got a DVI, HDMI and DisplayPort out. So we're going to remove these plastic, or rubber I should say, plugs, and we're actually going to put them into onto the motherboard here, because the motherboard display outputs aren't active with this configuration because of our 10400F CPU. There we go. So hopefully there won't be any confusion with anyone who tries to use this computer if they have to plug in displays, they'll realise that they have to plug into the graphics card. My wife's looking ready for bed. She's all jammied up and everything. You gotta start work early tomorrow, don't you, babe? Hang on. I don't have that on the right way. It should go behind. Alrighty. So one last cable to plug in. That's just our graphics card power. Alrighty. So there we have it. One budget gaming PC ready to go. There we go. And now I might need a screen. Alrighty, so I'm going to unhook my anti-static strap now, because we are done working on the internal components here. Now it's time for the moment of truth. Have I hooked everything up right? Have I done everything? Are the fans going to all light up? Let's see. Well, that's looking good. Yes, yeah, Keegan just commented, I'm glad I got my PC when I did now that I'm back in lockdown. Yeah, absolutely, man. Lockdown's rough. Like, we've barely had any sort of lockdown here in Queensland. Okay, so SMP profile 1. And we're going to exit out of that. So I'll grab my Windows 10 installation media. Give it something to boot to. So you can change the there, it's on kind of rainbow setting there. Alrighty, so we're not going to enter a product key here. Windows 10 Pro. There we go. So I've got myself a second capture card, and what that means is soon I won't be zooming in on a screen with my camera. You'll just get the video feed directly, and you'll still be able to hear me talk, and I'll still be able to do and say everything, just you'll be able to clearly see what I'm doing on the screen. And that'll enable me to make a heap of videos about how to do this and how to do that, so you're going to be able to come to my YouTube channel and figure out how to solve all those computer problems and all those how do I do this kind of problems, because I'm going to be making heaps of little videos like that. I'm going to fill my channel up with content that's useful to people and is understandable for people. That's my goal. Keegan says, last couple of lockdowns didn't affect me because I was classed as an essential, but this time I'm not. Yeah, so my wife works in retail at Coles, so she's an essential worker. In my role, in my other job, I was classed as an essential worker, so I still have to go out as well. Yeah, I don't know whether it's worse to be locked at home or to be out and as an essential worker and forced to still do everything and go out and brave the sick people. Not sure which one's worse. And so yeah, we've got USB-C on the back of this motherboard, so I can just plug my SSD directly in. And we got Wi-Fi 6 or AX Wi-Fi on this motherboard, so no worries about slow downloads here tonight. Had slightly slower downloads than usual last night because we just had like a standard Wi-Fi adapter. It was going to a kid. He was on a bit of a budget. The parents were on a budget for it. You know what it's like when you got a 10, 11-year-old kid. You can't spend $3,000 on computer for them. Like that's just ridiculous. In my opinion, anyway. If you want to spend $3,000 on your kid for a computer, maybe consider putting $1,500 away in an account. Give him a $1,500 computer for now. Let him get used to that, and then when you get him something that's going to turn his computer into a $3,000 computer, then he might actually appreciate what he's getting. Because that's one of the things with like new people buying computers. If you've never owned a computer before and you jump straight in and get the top of the range PC, yeah, you're gonna have a good time, but you're not really gonna know what you've got. And see, that's the thing about it, eh? In order to truly appreciate what you've got to experience what it's like to not have that. If that makes sense. Some people say, oh, it's like jumping into a Ferrari when you've just got your license or something like that. And I kind of disagree with that, because jumping in a Ferrari when you first got your license, you could probably kill yourself. You're not going to kill yourself buying an expensive computer. And you're not going to destroy it just from trying to use it. It's not like you're going to turn on your expensive computer and it's going to catch fire. Whereas jump straight in a Ferrari, if you don't know how to drive a really high powered car like that, there's a very high chance that you'll spin off into a power pole within 10 minutes of driving that thing. So yeah, bit of a different scenario there, but a more apt example would be to be a P-plater and jumping straight into like a Lexus or a BMW with all of the luxury refined suspension and the noise cancelling cabin and stuff, so it's really quiet, really smooth. You can't appreciate those features of the car if you've never driven a Hyundai Excel 5-speed. The story sounds like it relates to me somehow. No, I'm just trying to make some analogies about buying a computer. I don't think you're quite in that situation, Nick, because I'm pretty sure you've owned other computers before in your life. You've used older, slower computers. You told me about your mum, and you have old laptops and stuff that you're using. So you've experienced PC, and you've experienced what a slow entry-level PC is. And then you're like, no, I want a good PC. And then you come out and got that. So you've driven the example I just gave. You've driven the Hyundai Excel 5-speed manual 1996 model. And you've driven that around for a couple of years, and you know what a rough, cheap car is to drive. And then if you jumped in a Lexus or a BMW, you'd be like, oh man, this thing just drives beautifully. And that you wouldn't appreciate it if you'd never driven anything before and just jumped straight in that luxury car. And it's sort of the same way with computers. So if you're a first-time buyer, sure, get something decent, but maybe don't go really, really hard with it at first. Maybe get something half decent, and put some money away to upgrade it in 6 to 12 months. Once you're a bit more familiar with it and using it, and you're familiar with running the games that you like to play, and you familiarise yourself with what the graphics settings do and stuff, because if you get a good one, you just run everything on maximum settings all the time and it's great. Whereas if you get a cheaper one, then you're like, oh, okay, so I get like 10% better frames per second if I turn this feature and this feature off, and I don't really notice much of a difference when I do that, so I'm going to run like this. And you'll understand those little things, and then when you get a good one and you can run everything on max, then you can appreciate the little things which you just miss if you just jump straight into something really expensive. Oh no. That can happen. That can happen as well, but it's typically a bit less common. Usually when someone wants to spend a heap on a computer, they've usually got a pretty good idea of what they want. I say usually because there is that person who is at high risk of like spending a lot of money and then getting buyer's remorse afterwards. But I'm always real straight up with people with PCs. I'm not just trying to sell everyone like the highest dollar value PC I can get. I'm sort of more like, okay man, what do you use your computer for? What are you doing with it? Like, what do you act like? Don't worry about what the best one is. Just tell me what you do day in, day out. Because the last thing I want you to do, I say this to people all the time, is spend not enough where you're going to be like, you're going to get it and it's going to be really unsatisfying for you. But I also don't want you to spend too much where you've just gone and wasted all this money. And maybe you've gone and wasted too much money on the box when you should have spent a little bit less on the box and got yourself a big 40-inch screen or something like that. Because, I mean, don't you want a big, nice screen to look at? Because when you use your computer, you're looking at the screen the whole time, aren't you? So, all those display drivers are done. So we'll get in here and we'll install some other software. It's gaming PC, so yeah, we'll get Epic Games installer. Firmware, hardware monitor for our stress tests. Frames downloaded. Yeah, so I'll make it something goes wrong with your computer. Problem, and it for you remotely, like either on the phone or and so one of the things I might get you to do is open up one of these apps that I've actually installed for you and run it. These apps test various parts of the computer. Sometimes I can get a picture as to what apps and telling me what comes up. So it's kind of, that's part of the reason why I leave them on people's computers. And like you can get rid of them. They're not essential or anything like that. But they're just handy to have in the event that something's not working quite right. And then if you can't bring your computer back to me in a convenient way and you're trying to talk to me remotely, this might be the way that that I'm able to solve your problem quicker, because you can tell me, you can show me, oh, that this isn't working right, and then I'll be like, okay, well that tells me where the problem is, so I'll start advising you to check various other things now. What have we got here? Photoshop Premiere, no. Work with Office on computer, kind of needs Office. Didn't need it. We need, I don't have the latest version of this. Dragon Center. So Dragon Center is an app from MSI that it's kind of like Asus Armory. It'll sort of open up and it will allow you to download all the drivers for your motherboard really easily. App here, Cinebench R23. So you can all download this one at home, this one, Cinebench R23. Just search R23 in the Microsoft App Store. And this is an app that'll test the performance of your CPU. And it's a really good a stress test on a computer. You want to see how hot it gets, because it's a very demanding app. The work that it gets your CPU to do is about as intensive as it gets. So your computer's never going to get as hot as what it gets in Cinebench for your CPU in anything normal that you're going to do. Stream is going nuts. What's...
the line.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Oh, laggy wise.
Laggy wise? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's downloading really slow. Everything is. That's really bad. A bit better. Yeah, it's all good now. Yeah, not sure what happened there. Bit of local congestion on the NBN. As expected, right? I really need gigabit Ethernet. Not gigabit Ethernet, gigabit internet. But see, I'm with TPG, and I've been with TPG for like 20 years, and they don't have gigabit Ethernet. Should be good now. That's really weird. Alrighty, let's get Dragon Center going on. Yeah, I think it is. Nick. And see, I've normally got pretty good internet here. I don't think we've had really any other problems with any of our streams. It's just Sunday night, man. You know how it is. Everyone's using the internet on Sunday night in 2021. If you're not using the internet on Sunday night in 2021, you either live under a rock, literally don't have anything other than an old TV to watch, or you're just like one of these people who sort of shuns electricity and reads books by candlelight. I don't know.
I do that.
Yeah, but you don't do that every night. That's not like something that you do regularly. You don't shun TVs and technology to read books as a lifestyle. Yeah. Yep. So when we launch Dragon Center for the first time, we need to right click it, go to More, and go to Run as Administrator. And so the reason why it does that is that MSI Afterburner has, sorry, not MSI Afterburner, MSI Dragon Center. There is another app called Afterburner. And what it does is it allows you to control a lot of the things in BIOS from in Windows. And in order for it to gain permission to mess around with BIOS settings from within Windows, you need to give it administrator permission to install itself and activate all those systems. I'm always using the internet in a certain way. Yeah, I mean, like I do this like pretty much every night now, almost. And yeah, we don't usually have problems, but like I said, Sunday night is a big night for internet usage. That's just the sign of the times. Internet, it's just like I predicted when I was a teenager, that the internet will be all that there is. There's not going to be TV. No one's going to broadcast TV signals over radio waves. It's not going to happen anymore. Office is downloaded. Oh, yeah, we got crucial. Yeah, SSD sped up. Oh, I see the readme. There we go. Dragon centers up. So we can go down here to Mystic Light. And set our... Oh, they're on rainbow. So we can go down here to support and go to live update. And now this is just going to go find all of our motherboard and chipset drivers for us. So we can go and select what we want. So obviously we want all these ones here. Intel chipset drivers, Realtek PCIe network drivers, Bluetooth drivers, Realtek HD universal drivers, Intel ME drivers, Intel SGX. We want all that stuff. Third-party utilities, we don't need Intel Extreme Tuning Utility, that's only for K-series chips. We don't need Norton Security, and we will install all of these other utilities that come with the MSI motherboard. And so we'll go and install all that. And what have we got left here? Put the benchmarks on there. Well, I'll put Heaven on there, and I'll put Valley on there. I don't think you guys have seen Valley. I don't usually install it. It's a slightly bigger file size. It's still a DirectX 11 benchmark. Every computer needs a VLC media player. Okay. Yeah, Norton antivirus. I consider it almost, I basically consider it bloatware. Because, yeah, it's like, if I'm going to bother paying for something, I'm not paying for Norton. You know what I mean? You got the free trials and all that, but yeah, if you're going to pay for antivirus, get Kaspersky or Bitdefender. They're the best. Eastern Europeans, you know what those guys are like, they don't fuck around with IT. In Soviet Russia, we hack you. So yeah, I've been using Bitdefender personally for about 15-16 years now. So I can say pretty safely that yeah, it's a good product. It's worth getting. Disable. This Dragon Center going, it's getting there. How's Windows going? We've got all of our updates, our optional updates. Don't need Xeon. Yeah, okay. So Sunday night's not a good night for this. But that's the thing, Sunday night's the night when people are like keen to watch shit like this. So MSI Afterburner, sorry, MSI Dragon Center done. Enable momentum cache. Actually, just let me have a quick look. How's the firmware on these drives? Make sure that's all up to date. Yeah, there is a firmware update. Let's get that. Make sure all that stuff installed correctly. Firmware update completed. Intel chipset drivers. Back to back, okay. Yeah, Kieran's pretty much onto it there. That's exactly what's going on. Though there's no lockdown in Queensland where I am, so you would think the local conditions would be okay, but you know, like I said, I live in a pretty densely populated area, so Sunday nights in general are not good. It's just coming up because I haven't done a restart. Let's do this. Yeah, I feel really sorry for all you guys down south with the lockdown. It's not fun. It really isn't. And if you are classed as an essential worker and you're out wearing a mask, that sucks too. It's not just a no consequence thing to have to wear a mask all day. Your face gets sweaty and itchy. You end up with like breath sweat all over your face. It's kind of gross. Yeah, it gives you new respect for medical workers that wear them all day, having to wear them just for short periods of time during lockdowns and stuff. So that's all pretty good. Our cable management's looking nice on the back there. So we're just going to shut this up now. All of our lights are working and we would expect. And so we'll be right to ship this one off tomorrow. So this PC, you don't see it, it comes with a 31.5 inch 165 Hertz gaming monitor and a keyboard and mouse, just like this one here. You can change the RGB lighting on it, you can go different colours and stuff for you, so you're not stuck on that red that you're seeing me with it on. Red is just its default colour. Alrighty. So I'll get this glass panel put back on. And then we can configure our graphics card fans and any other settings in Windows that we need to adjust. And then we can do our benchmark stress test, and that will be it for tonight. So we've got got another one coming up tomorrow, fairly similar to this. Okay, so let's fire up Afterburner. Let's just quickly tune our graphics card fan, so as you know, I like 80 at 60. 100 at 70. Monitoring. I won't put heaps of stats on the screen. Okay. So this is the Valley benchmark. So we're just going to run this on high, 1080p, nothing special. So frame rate is the number that's just below where it says RAM in blue. Yeah, so the frames are jumping around a little bit, but it's staying really, really high through this. So as you can see, like this roughly shows you what something like Fortnite will run at on like high. So even with the 1650 Super, you get a decent gaming experience. Like, it's not, if you try to run it at 4K and stuff, it's not going to run very well. It's not a card designed for that. But for 1080p gaming and stuff, just playing like first-person shooter games and stuff, this is fine. My suggestion is this is a perfect starter card for someone wanting to get into PC gaming. Because it enables you to get into PC gaming for not as much money. And then if you get serious into it, then you can actually go and drop the money on something a bit more expensive. And you'll also, like I was saying before, you'll also appreciate what you have because you've had something that was more entry level before, and then you trade it up to something that's high end, and you can appreciate all of those little differences. So I think I forgot to hit benchmark on this, but I'm not really that concerned about it. I can see that our graphics card settled into 67 degrees. while it's running this. Pretty normal for this particular card. That's fine. It's dropping down to 66, then up to 67, then down to 66, and up to 67. About right, Nick. It's 1080p gaming, yep. The 3070 is roughly the same as a 2080 Ti. And a 3080 is a meaningful generational leap forward in performance, and obviously the same for a 3090. Well, Nick, the 1080 Ti is the old flagship. It's what the 2080 Ti essentially replaced. So the 1080 Ti's got 11 gigabytes of VRAM. So it's a pretty capable card. It's also got a lot of cards that have, decent power delivery for it and stuff. So it can be overclocked and pushed pretty hard. And you're comparing an 80 series with a 60 series. See, that's that number at the end. You can compare like a 1070 is replaced by the 2070, and the 2070 is replaced by the 3070, moving forward in generations. But comparing a 1080 Ti with a 3060 is like comparing an i7 with an i5, or an i9 with an i5. More like it. So it's, even though it's a 10 series versus a 30 series, you've got like the flagship top of the range 10 series, and then you've got like a mid-range 30 series. So that's kind of how it works out. Yeah, the number at the end. So the first number is like the generation number. So there's like the 900s. The 800s, the 700s, the 600s, then there's the 10s, 1000 series, then there's the 20 or 2000 series, and the 3000 series, and then you've got the 50, the 60, the 70, and the 80. It's just like Intel CPUs. The first number, that in your CPU, you've got the 10700K. So the first two numbers, that's 10, that's the 10th generation, and then your CPU is a 700 within that generation. And so that comes more into play with, say, this CPU. This is an i5-10400. So you can get an i5-10400, 10500, and 10600. They're all called i5s, but really one's an i4, one's an i5, and one's an i6. They just don't market it. But that's the model numbers, 400, 500, and 600. And yet the same in 9th gen, the same in 8th gen. So that's kind of how these model numbers work. They're codes. It's not, the whole number as itself doesn't really mean anything, but if broken down into little sections, it has meaning. Like you don't need to see what the actual model number is. All you need to know when you read a CPU is read that CPU number. That CPU number tells you everything you need to know, the generation, the SKU within the generation, and if you're nerdy enough, you should know the number of cores, the number of threads, and the clock speed. No, so graphics cards are pretty much the same thing, got the same kind of principle going on with their names. So it's, yeah, like I said, with the graphics card cards, the first 1 or 2 digits, so if it's a 3-digit number, it's the first digit is the generation. If it's a 4-digit number, the first 2 digits are the generation. And then, yeah, the other ones are the models within that generation. So you can compare, you'll find cases where you'll be able to go, hey, check this 1080 Ti. When they release the 3050, the 1080 Ti is probably going to be a faster card than the 3050, even though the 3050 is a new generation. Because you can't compare a 50 with an 80, because it's like comparing an i5 with an i9 across different generations. It's not exactly an apples to apples comparison. You're comparing 2 different things. Yeah, no, that's fine, Nick. It's you and 10,000, 10 million other people probably, just don't understand this stuff, because it's like, it's not that it's overly complicated, it just takes a long time to go and research all this shit on your own and learn it all. Remember, I started with computers just as like an 8-year-old kid on my mum and dad's computer. Then I got my own first computer when I was like 10, 11. I just taught myself everything from a kid upwards. So by the time I was 18, I was able to build, fix, repair computers that I've never done computer course by that stage. Oh yeah, so what I said before, I was like, so the 3080 is where you get to a true generational leap forward in performance, and that's what I'm talking about. So the 3070, for example, that's roughly on par with a 2080 Ti. So the 3070 is not exactly a generational leap forward in performance, whereas the 3080 outperforms the 2080 Ti. So that is actually a generational leap forward in performance. And obviously the 3090 is the same as that, and obviously the Radeon 6000 series, some of them are faster than the 2080 Ti, and all of them are faster than the Radeon 5000 series cards. So you could definitely consider all them to be generational leap forwards in performance as well. And that's part of the reason why 3080 has been shopped so hard, is because if you bought a 1080 Ti and they released the 2080 Ti, right? It was a case of you get ray tracing and not much else. The cards are pretty similar to each other. They perform roughly the same at 1080p and in the meaningful resolutions that a lot of gamers game at. And so for people who spent big money on a 1080 Ti, they're looking at the 2080 and going, 2,200 Aussie dollars for a 2080 Ti. Oh man, it's not that much extra performance. I think I'm happier with my 1080. I'm not buying the 2080 Ti at all. I'm skipping this generation. And so a lot of those guys who have 1080 Ti's, they just skip the 20 series altogether. They were like, hey, ray tracing's kind of cool, but I really don't give a shit about it right now for the games that I play, and I'm not going to spend $2,000 on something that is essentially going to be just as good as what I've got at the games that I want to play. But when they released 3080 was enough of an increase in just general rasterization performance and ray tracing performance that people who owned a 1080 they could reasonably look at it and the price that it was priced at, especially at first, and go, oh man, I'm a sucker if I don't upgrade. So all those people just like, yeah, this is the meaningful generational leap forward that we've been waiting for. And so that's why 3080 was a big deal, and still is a big deal for anyone now. It represents this big point where there's a lot of serious gamers who were, running 1080 Ti's before. This is the point where they're all upgrading. So, no, Nick, don't let this talk about these flagship SKUs and flagship performance and stuff make you feel bad about what you've got. I've said it here before on my videos that just because there's a new graphics card or CPU that comes out, it doesn't mean that your CPU and graphics card get any slower. They're still just as good as when you bought them. So don't get caught up on what's better than what you've got. Just be happy that you've got something that's really, really good. Because let me flip the script for you, Nick, here. A 3060 Ti is roughly on par with a 1080 Ti, like you said. If you bought a 1080 Ti back when it came out, it would have cost you, if you adjusted it for today's standards, it would have cost you twice as much as what you paid for the 3060. So you can consider it as you got yourself 1080 Ti performance at half the price. So don't worry about the fact that there was a card that cost more than twice as much as what you spend that's better. Don't worry about that. Just consider the fact that you got what used to be X amount dollars worth of graphics card for considerably cheaper. So how's that graphics card going? Settling in a little bit warmer there. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to quit out of this. And we're going to run it in windowed mode. So we're going to run that, and we're going to run, just do a 10-minute throttle, because this isn't a high-powered machine or anything like that. It's not going to be used for rendering or any of that, so we'll just do ourselves a quick little stress test here. We'll open up hardware monitor. Yeah, it's basically a card that's worth twice as much. You adjust a little bit for inflation as well, and you can basically say it's twice as much. And if you've got a 1080 Ti out there and you're looking at the 30 series and you can't afford one and stuff, don't feel bad. You've still got an excellent graphics card. A 1080 Ti is a killer. My wife's got a 980 Ti and that keeps up pretty well. Nice overclock on it, and nice memory overclock, and happy days. Let's make sure our fans are on maximum for this. I generally like to do that so we can go into user scenario, extreme performance. Yeah, there we go. That's looking a bit better. Here's our graphics card going with the CPU going hard. Yep, staying well under control there. It's very nice. I like it when I see this, and I mean this is what you normally see on like a cheaper system here, because the parts don't get as hot, so it doesn't require as much cooling and as much tuning and stuff like that. It's usually a case of just get the fans going and run the stress test and everything's going to be fine. Stock cooler and all that. And that's one of the good things about, you know, going with Intel, is if you're buying one of their cheaper ones for a budget computer, they just work. They just work. They don't get too hot or anything like that. They're just simple, easy solutions. So I love AMD. They got like great products and stuff like that at the moment, but like everyone dumps too hard on Intel, in my opinion. Looking at just the raw performance numbers of the latest high-end CPUs and being like, AMD's better. And it's like, well, it's not just about which company's has the fastest CPUs or all that. Stability and simplicity and ease of use for the end user and all that kind of thing, compatibility. These are all legitimate other things to consider when buying a CPU and all that, especially if you're running a business. If you're running a business, I'm going to sell you the thing that I know is going to give you the least problems and the least amount of downtime. If you're running a business, downtime is lost money. So you don't care about, oh, I saved $27 on the CPU and got the same performance by going AMD. You don't care about that. You care that it fucked up and I had to get this weird driver to download and then it kind of worked and then I had problems with this. That's too much of a headache for a business owner. So yeah, if you're running a business, you'll probably get an Intel suggestion from me unless you've got a workload that would be so much better with an AMD. And AMD will get better with their Ryzen architecture and stuff, and manufacturers of products and software will tune their products to work better with Ryzen over time. But we're not at the stage yet where you're going to see the mass adoption of AMD by businesses. We're still a little way away from that. AMD has a lot of background work to do before they can start making a case for big, Fortune 500 companies to go, right, let's consider a widespread change of computer architecture for our business. It's just, that's not going to happen until there's a pretty compelling case to change. Businesses don't like to change. They like to stick with what they know and what's reliable and what's worked well for them for years. They don't like to be guinea pigs and to test things out. They like to wait until someone else tests it out. And then once someone else has given it a go, then they're more likely to go, yeah, let's adopt this new system. It's the same for anything. That no one wants to go first unless they're really confident that their idea is a winner. But look, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna leave it here. We're at the end of this render. We've had no major temperatures. We had a little bit of a spike into the low 90s there when we didn't have our front fans pushing through as much air. But once we turned them up, the temperature dropped down to about 15 to 20 degrees less. Alright, well, it's got 16 seconds to go, so I'll start wrapping it up here. So thanks everyone for watching tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night with another build. It'll be pretty similar to this one, but we've got I've managed to get a hold of a GTX 1660 Super. Don't ask me how I got that, but we got one. And that'll be going in a computer tomorrow. So that's the big brother of the graphics card we've installed here tonight. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.